Hello, this is a synopsis of chapter 12. It's a short chapter, and in chapter 12, we move beyond the simple pricing strategy where we had one product and one price in chapter 6. And and remember, in that pricing strategy, basically the simple strategy was that you should sell more until your marginal revenue equals your marginal cost. If your marginal cost exceeds your marginal revenue, you should sell less. So we're moving beyond the simple pricing strategy to more complex pricing strategies when that simple rule may not apply. There's really not a lot of math in this chapter. We're just talking about more things that a company should do if they acquire a substitute or there's complements, or if they're trying to raise the price. What are some of the things that they can do if they're raising price to try to minimize a backlash, because people have psychological biases. So this is not a real math intensive chapter. It's just talking about some different strategies. Okay, so the first strategy is what if you acquire a competitor? What if you acquire a substitute product? Well, here they're saying, or in the chapter, they're saying that if you acquire a substitute product, obviously you've reduced competition. Therefore, what can you do? You can raise the price on both of them to increase your margins. And it says that raise prices on both to reduce competition between them, but just the simple fact that you're acquiring a substitute product reduces that competition. So you can raise the price. You can also raise prices more on a low margin product. So remember back in the demand elasticity or the price elasticity of demand chapter, and we mentioned that demand is more inelastic for lower margin products than higher margin products, meaning that if you increase the price of a pack of chewing gum by 10%, people are still going to buy that chewing gum. The demand is not going to fall off very much because it's only a couple dollars, between $1 and $2. But if you increase the price on a refrigerator by 10%, that your demand will drop off by quite a bit more compared to a pack of chewing gum because it's a bigger ticket item. So this kind of follows that same theory. If you have a low margin item, then you can raise the price more on that item. Because demand is more inelastic. All right, and then you want to also try to make the products less substitutable. So now remember, I've been talking about one of the competitive environments that's called monopolistic competition. Remember, we have perfect competition, monopolistic competition, where you try to differentiate the products, oligopoly and monopoly. So in this situation where you've acquired a substitute, you're probably in an industry like Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark. Those would be two good examples. You've got a lot of these different consumer products, essentially the same: diapers, toothpaste, soap, and you're trying to make them, you're trying to differentiate your product. So if you buy a substitute product, try to differentiate them. And if you can make them less substitutable, you can have a niche for each product, then that will increase your profitability. Okay, now what if you acquire a complementary product? Well, if you acquire a complementary product, something that goes together with the other one, it says in the chapter that you should reduce the price on both of them to increase the demand for both products. Because if someone buys one, they're going to buy the other. Now, if demand is hard to forecast, it's better to underprice versus overpriced, because if you underprice, then you're going to get your chances of increasing the demand for that product, of course, are much greater. So if you think about it, if you underprice, you get people to buy the product. And then later, as you raise your prices, you may have some loyal customers, and so the customers will stick with you. Demand will be less elastic. But if you price too high right off the bat, you'll never get those customers. So it's better, if you can't really forecast the demand, err on the side of caution and underprice versus overpricing. All right. Also, if promotional if promotional expenditures make the demand more elastic. So typically a promotion is going to make demand more elastic. And obviously if demand is more elastic, then you should reduce the price to promote the product. If the demand is inelastic, then you would increase the price to promote the product because that would increase your total revenue. Okay, and then finally, think about how customers are. People always like to get a bargain. They don't want to feel like they're getting ripped off or that they're getting less value than before. And so what a lot of companies will do is they're aware of these psychological biases and they will try to frame anything negative in a positive light or a positive outlook. So for example, I know a lot of you probably don't have cable TV anymore, and it's going to be interesting to see with the whole streaming cable and that whole industry is a complete mess. But back in the day, the cable company would, I'm going back 25, 30 years through today. They don't do this too much anymore, but back when they had a monopoly before streaming services, they would increase the price of your cable pretty much every year by $1 or so. They'd send you this letter. The first part of the letter would tell you how many cable channels they were adding, basically things you don't watch, like a third home shopping network or something. But they would tell you about maybe the high quality cable lines that they had, or that they were upgrading their infrastructure and they're adding more channels. They would always say they were adding more channels, which they would add a couple. But then in that next paragraph is where they tell you they're increasing cable costs. And so they're trying to frame that in a positive way. So you can try to think about some other situations where maybe that has impacted you, where you've had an increase in something you purchase or something you use, the price has increased, but the company has tried to put it in a positive outlook. Let me think of some others. Some companies will, when they're increasing their price, but they are telling you that they're becoming greener, more environmentally safe or so forth. And they've had to pass on these prices to the consumer, but they're making you feel good about the fact that you're paying more. Think about back in either the last chapter or the chapter before, where we talked about the reduction in competition, that one of those strategies that companies will use. And when the government helps them reduce the competition, they really like it, with the washing machine story, where all these washing machines now have gone to these high efficiency. And so companies can frame that bias, that they can frame that in such a way to where we should feel good about paying more for a washing machine because we're saving water, we're saving the planet. So anyway, that's just a couple examples, but these companies will try to always put these price increases in a positive light, gains versus losses in a positive way. Okay, so as I said, this is a short chapter on more complex pricing strategies. And that's it until next time, the next time will be in the last set. We'll be talking about the last 3 chapters, which is the last homework set that you have to do for this book. Okay, goodbye for now.